that they have to face. In fact, they said to me that because of the illegal nature of that population movement, many of them are exposed to tremendous violence. This story goes on. In fact, in today's world, 1.2 billion people live under $1 a day, and out of that, 60% are women. And there's no way, even though all the member states came in to develop what are called the Millennium Development Goals, to halve the world's absolute poverty, to make sure that there are equal educational opportunities for boys and girls, even in primary school, none of all those goals will be achieved unless we make sure that when we try to halve the world's absolute poverty, we reduce women's poverty. And most of these women are found in the casual sectors. They are found in the unprotected sectors. And we need to make sure that the human rights of these women are protected when they come here. We have to make sure that when they come here as migrants, when they are located in the domestic sector, there is some protection of those rights. But because they are illegal workers, it's extremely difficult to protect them. They go as undocumented workers. So increasingly, in fact, 2 weeks ago, I was invited by the State Department for a meeting on globalization and trafficking. And one of the issues that I stressed was the fact that there's no way to address trafficking without addressing migration. And also the fact that unless you address illegal migration, you are not going to reduce the trafficking issue, because you create an environment of uncertainty at a time when there is a crisis in economic security around the world, and more people are moving across borders for jobs that nobody wants in the richer countries. As long as there is inequality around the world, you cannot stop these movements, and therefore it makes more sense to try to regulate them in a way where there is protection of their rights and therefore greater security. The Secretary General of the United Nations says that the level of fear and violence in our world today is so high. We are afraid of the other. And yet, in today's world, in the globalizing world, we have to see ourselves as part of a global citizenship. He says that peace and security in all our world is not like any commodity. It's not like land. It's not like timber or whatever. It is, in fact, one of those items or one of the forces in human life where the more secure your neighbors are, the more secure you are. And therefore, it is so important to look at how can we create a more secure economic world for all. So one area of my work focuses on the reduction of poverty, especially feminized poverty in the world. Whilst globalization is one of the forces that affect our world, unfortunately, the other side or the other problem that shape our world today is what I call fragmentation. There are many countries that are at war, many communities that are at war. And one of the unfortunate consequence of the impact of war is how the nature of warfare has changed. In fact, during the First World War, the majority of the people who were killed were the soldiers who fought those wars. In today's world, 75% of those who are killed are civilians. But besides that, the nature of warfare itself has changed. And we in UNIFEM have addressed that issue because violence against women have been used as a weapon of war. Forced impregnation, systematic rape have been used in countries like Rwanda, Bosnia. The mutilation of women have occurred in Sierra Leone and so on. And this is not something, the violation is not just to violate women, it is to destroy and humiliate the men, it is to destroy and humiliate the communities, it is to destroy a future. In fact, I was also in Rwanda very recently, and I met the women who survived the genocide, and most of them were infected by HIV/AIDS. Most of them have lost family members, totally wiped out. They were infected by HIV/AIDS because they were raped by people who were infected by HIV/AIDS. In fact, patients, men who had HIV/AIDS, were set free to rape these women as a weapon of war. I thought I was going to find a lot of hatred and a lot of anger, but I was really touched meeting these women. What I found was the capacity to transcend some of the deepest levels of hatred to adopt the children of the other side. Because the whole conflict there was an ethnic conflict between the Tutsi and the Hutus. And yet they know that at the end of the day, nobody can say how pure or contaminated they are by one ethnicity or another. We all had intermixing. And therefore they felt that what they wanted was to celebrate the children of Rwanda. And I was amazed that those who lost their children were in fact adopting the AIDS orphans. I went there because we had a major program there with post-conflict reconstruction. I say this because UNIFEM's work in the situation of conflict and war has been very much to work with the Security Council to establish what we now call a landmark resolution. It's one of the standards that are being used. And this is called Security Council Resolution 1325. And there are 4 parts to this resolution that I wanted to focus on. One was the impact of conflict and war on women and girls. And the impact was what I've just described to you, but worse. It's much worse than what I have shared with you this evening. But the other area was the glaring gap in protection and assistance. We do not know how to protect the people who are caught in conflicts. We are too late, and we do too little and too late. But the issue, the third issue of that Security Council resolution has also been to look at the work and the organizing that has gone down in the ground. In fact, even in the most impossible of cases, you find that it's the women who are holding communities together. It is the women who are able to cross sides to talk with one another. And this has been true in my work when I was asked to convene some of the discussions between the Palestinian and the Israeli women. This has been true of our work in the Sudan, between the North and the South. It has been our work when we were invited to bring women to the peace table during the Burundi peace process, and now with the Congo process as well. And everyone asks, what difference does it make to have women at a peace table, or to focus the leadership role of women in peace negotiation? And I looked at what are the issues that these women bring. They bring issues that nobody else wanted to talk about. Issues of land rights, issues of rape babies, issues of violence that have been used, the kind of work that needs to go on, the kind of partnerships and communities that have got to be built if we are to get out of that kind of a crisis. Now, the fourth part of this resolution talks about post-crisis countries, post-crisis rebuilding. And I was very happy that we were able to establish this norm and standards in order to work and to get international community to invest in Afghanistan. If it was not because of this norm and standard, if it was not because of this Security Council resolution, I doubt I would have been so successful. All of you know what happened in Afghanistan. The media, although we knew that it happened for many years, nobody took any responsibility for it. But here the media, after September 11, played a major role, and there was an international outcry. And international community decided that they were going to invest in the reconstruction process in the lives of women in Afghanistan. I was there in March of this year, and we have a major program in the country. And what this program does is to make sure, first of all, that in the constitution, in the new constitution of the country, you have the incorporation of the women's rights framework. Afghanistan as a country, in fact, signed